Hendra was not born into fame or fortune. A simple village boy from the foothills of West Java, his life seemed ordinary to anyone who glanced at him. Yet beneath the thin frame and gentle eyes lay a spirit forged by generations of warriors. At 7, he began learning Simande Silat from his father, a humble farmer and keeper of ancestral knowledge passed down from Hendra's great-grandfather, once a revered village warrior. Training was never in grand halls or fancy dojos. It took place in the yard, on dirt floors, beneath coconut trees, beside a trickling river. "Listen carefully, Hendra," his father would say, demonstrating the sweeping movements and horse stances. "Silat is not for show. It is not to impress anyone. It is life. It is heritage. It protects. It guards. It teaches the soul." Hendra practiced tirelessly while other children played. He fell, bruised, and bled often, but every wound was a lesson in devotion. Years of repetition, pain, and patience shaped him into more than a fighter. They shaped him into a guardian of tradition. By the age of 20, circumstances forced Hendra to make a difficult choice. The land was barren, debts mounting, and his mother sick. He decided to become a migrant worker abroad, carrying the weight of his family's survival. Leaving home, he stepped into a world completely different from his village. Towering buildings, unfamiliar language, the ceaseless hum of urban life. Yet even in the foreign city, he never abandoned his martial art. After long shifts in a factory, Hendra would find quiet rooftops or parks to train, repeating the movements his father had taught him. In the neon-lit nights, his mind spoke to the figures of his parents, their faces fueling his determination. Every drop of sweat was a tribute, every bruised knuckle a promise to keep his heritage alive. Hendra lived frugally, sending small amounts home to pay for his mother's treatment. He endured ridicule from co-workers who mocked his simple village techniques. "Karate, kung fu, Muay Thai, your Samande is nothing," they scoffed. He would smile, silently confident that the day would come when Simande's true power would be revealed. That day arrived when Hendra saw a poster for an international martial arts tournament, a gathering of masters from around the world. Among the names of famous karate, taekwondo, and Muay Thai experts, one line caught his eye. Open to anyone daring to showcase their martial art, Hendra stared at the paper long into the night. A voice seemed to whisper from within, "This is the time." He clutched a photo of his parents. "Dad, Mom, maybe this is crazy, but if I don't try, who will bring Samande to the world?" The next day, with trembling hands, he registered. Officials raised eyebrows. Samande? They had never heard of it. Hendra only smiled, quietly prepared to prove that the heritage of a small village could stand alongside legends. Once registered, Hendra faced an internal battlefield more challenging than the one he would meet in the arena. The weight of expectation pressed upon him, not only his own, but that of his parents, his village, and all Indonesians who had long been overlooked in the global martial arts scene. That night, in his narrow boarding room, Hendra trained with unmatched intensity. Sweat drenched his black t-shirt, muscles quivered with exhaustion. Yet each movement, each stance, carried his father's teachings. Silat flows like water. Let your opponent become the rock. Find the path in their weakness. As he rehearsed the Samande techniques, Hendra visualized the tournament. He imagined masters from China, Japan, Korea, and Thailand, all legends of their arts. He reminded himself that Simande was not about flashy acrobatics or blinding speed. It was about control, precision, and ethical force. Every strike had purpose. Every block was an art of reading the opponent's intent. In the quiet of his room, he spoke softly to himself. This is not only my test, but the test of my heritage. I fight not to defeat, but to show. Despite the exhaustion, Hendra did not allow fear to take hold. In his heart, he whispered encouragement, recalling the early mornings in his village, the dirt beneath his feet, the river flowing, his father's hands guiding him. These memories anchored him, forming a calm in the storm that would soon be the tournament. The physical preparation was matched by mental fortitude. Hendra envisioned the blows, the dodges, the flow of energy, imagining himself moving like water around the rocks of his opponent's attacks. The following morning, he stepped outside and looked up at the city skyline, shimmering with neon lights. It was a world so different from the village riverbanks. Yet he carried the same discipline, the same spirit. With each stride toward the tournament hall, he felt the eyes of his ancestors upon him. They had passed down this art not for recognition, but for honor. Yet now, in a foreign city filled with skepticism and doubt, Hendra knew it was time for Kamande to meet the world. At the registration hall, whispers followed him. A factory worker against Master Solon? He can't last around, Hendra ignored the snickers, focusing instead on his breathing. The first lesson of Simande echoed in his mind. Patience is strength. He prepared to face the unknown with composure, ready to demonstrate not arrogance, but the dignity of his craft. Even in silence, his determination radiated, visible to those who looked closely. By the evening, Hendra found a quiet park and trained once more. Each step was measured, every motion deliberate. Even the neon glow of the city seemed to fade, replaced by the sunlit river of his youth. The night stretched on, and with it, a calm certainty settled in his chest. He was ready. Simande was ready, and the world, unaware of the quiet storm approaching, would soon witness a lesson in honor, humility, and the art of ancestral wisdom. The morning of the tournament arrived, and the city's massive sports hall buzzed with energy. Thousands of spectators filled every seat, the air thick with anticipation and excitement. Flags of countless countries fluttered from every corner, each representing a lineage of martial excellence. Red lanterns hung from the rafters, and the scent of incense mixed with the subtle tang of sweat from the crowd. Vendors moved among the audience, selling snacks and cheering loudly for their favorite fighters, while groups whispered about the legends they had come to see. Hendra entered the participant waiting area, sitting cross-legged, breathing deeply to steady his nerves. Around him were warriors of global renown. A Muay Thai fighter from Thailand, his arms and legs tattooed with intricate sacred patterns. A Japanese karateka in a crisp white gi, black belt tied perfectly. A taekwondo expert from Korea whose body twisted and turned like rubber, every movement precise and fluid. Each competitor radiated confidence, honed over decades of training and competition. And then Hendra's name was called. Indonesia, Simande style. Hendra. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Simande? From Indonesia? What is that? Some shook their heads in confusion. Others chuckled. The little-known martial art of a village boy seemed insignificant compared to the storied legends surrounding them. Hendra's chest tightened slightly, but he held his composure. Years of quiet training, humility, and dedication had prepared him for this moment. He would not falter because of doubt or mockery. Across the arena, his opponent emerged. Liang Shao, a Shaolin master from China, legendary in his own right. Towering and muscular, dressed in a golden yellow robe that gleamed under the arena lights, his bald head reflected the spotlights like polished metal. The audience rose to their feet, showing respect to the master who was considered a living legend in martial arts circles. He walked with an arrogant confidence, every step deliberate, as if the floor beneath him belonged entirely to his presence. Hendra, in contrast, appeared modest and unassuming. A plain black t-shirt, loose trousers, and a small Sundanese headband completed his attire. No ornate robes, no flashy accessories. To the casual observer, he looked like an ordinary migrant worker, perhaps out of place in this arena of champions. But in his eyes burned the quiet fire of conviction. Hendra bowed respectfully, pressing his hands together on his chest. This was not intimidation. It was acknowledgement of a worthy adversary, and a silent promise to honor the art he carried. Liang Shao's eyes narrowed, curiosity mixed with condescension. Indonesia, he said, his words translated by the officials. Samande, I have never heard of it. Are you sure you wish to face me? This match will be over quickly. Laughter erupted in the crowd, a whip of derision aimed at the village boy. Hendra remained calm, his gaze steady. Our knowledge is not widely known, he said. But Samande is not for trifling. It is spirit. It is heritage. And today it will be shown with honor. The arena fell silent at his words, tension rippling through the audience. The first gong struck, reverberating like a pulse through every spectator's chest. Thousands of hearts beat in unison, all waiting to witness the clash of a humble village boy against a living legend of martial arts. Hendra took a deep breath, letting the rhythm of his training flow through him. The stage was set. History was about to be written. The first gong echoed through the arena and the battle began. Liang Shao, towering and confident, moved first. His body shot forward like a striking arrow, each step precise, his hands slicing through the air with lightning speed. The crowd gasped as he unleashed a powerful spinning kick, followed by a rapid punch aimed at Hendra's chest. His movements were fluid yet aggressive, a display of decades of mastery honed to perfection. The arena seemed to vibrate with every stomp of his feet, every clap of air from his strikes. Hendra remained calm, rooted in his commande stance. His right hand rose before his chest, left hand relaxed but ready. To the untrained eye, it appeared simple, almost casual, but every subtle shift of weight, every pivot of his foot, was deliberate. The first spinning kick came at him, and with a slight step to the side, Hendra allowed Liang Shao's foot to pass harmlessly through the air. The punch followed, yet he blocked it with an open hand, redirecting the force into a subtle twist of the wrist. The crowd erupted in murmurs of surprise. "Who is this boy?" a spectator whispered. "How can he evade such attacks?" Hendra didn't respond with words. His eyes remained fixed, reading every breath and motion of his opponent. He was not fighting recklessly. He was analyzing, absorbing, and letting Liang Shao expend his energy. In Simande, patience was strength. Let the opponent reveal his patterns, then flow like water to find the opening. Liang Shao's movements intensified. A flurry of punches, fast and coordinated, came at Hendra from all directions. He launched a signature Solin combination, a palm strike followed by a spinning knee aimed at Hendra's torso. The crowd braced for impact, yet Hendra shifted slightly, flowing with the motion rather than resisting directly. The strike passed harmlessly, the force redirected, and Hendra barely moved from his position. Cheers and gasps swept through the audience. Some began to question their assumptions about the underdog before them. Hendra's face remained calm, his breathing steady. He remembered his father's words. Silat is not about fighting blindly. Flow, observe, and respond with purpose. Every deflection, every step, every minor hand adjustment was a lesson applied in real time. Liang Shao's expression, initially one of arrogance, began to shift. Frustration crept in. How could a seemingly ordinary boy read his attacks, anticipate his movements, and respond with such precision? The arena grew tense. Hendra, though under constant assault, remained composed. Each motion he made demonstrated not only skill, but also restraint and control. The crowd watched in awe as the battle unfolded like a dance, violent yet precise, fast yet graceful. Even some of Liang Shao's coaches leaned forward, exchanging incredulous glances. This was not a brute force match. This was a demonstration of strategy, timing, and the subtle genius of Simande. As the first round continued, it became clear this was not the quick victory that the spectators had expected. Hendra, the unassuming village boy, was not only surviving, he was making Liang Shao expend energy and revealing openings without striking recklessly. The balance of the fight had begun to shift, not through power, but through wisdom, patience, and the calm flow of a true master in the making. As the first round progressed, Liang Shao's movements grew more intense. His punches and kicks, once fluid and confident, now carried a trace of desperation. Each strike Hendra evaded or redirected chipped away at the Solin master's patience. The crowd, initially laughing at the unassuming village boy, had fallen silent, caught in the unfolding spectacle of skill versus arrogance. Hendra stood rooted, calm as a stone, his eyes sharp, reading every movement, every breath, every subtle shift in Liang Shao's stance. Liang Shao decided to change tactics. No longer relying solely on speed, he began employing his famed locking techniques, attempting to seize Hendra's wrists and control his movements. The intent was clear: force the young man into submission and demonstrate the superiority of Solin. But Hendra, drawing upon years of disciplined Simande training, flowed around the attacks. He twisted, pivoted, and guided Liang Shao's energy past him, sometimes barely moving from his original stance. It was a dance of power and subtlety, precision and patience. Hendra's heart raced, but his mind remained serene. He recalled his father's lesson: let your opponent exhaust himself. The time to act will come, and then respond with purpose. He did not seek victory through aggression. He sought to demonstrate the wisdom of his art. Each deflection, each subtle redirecting of force was a conversation with his opponent, a dialogue of skill that transcended language and culture. The sullen master's face grew red with frustration. No one had ever endured his full force without faltering. The audience began to murmur in disbelief. Some whispered in awe, others shouted encouragement. "Look at him. He's reading every strike. This Samande. It's more than we expected." A small group of Indonesians in the crowd waved red and white flags, cheering loudly. Their voices, faint at first, swelled into a chorus of support. Hendra felt warmth rise in his chest. He was no longer fighting for himself alone. He carried the hopes of his countrymen, the honor of his ancestors, and the dignity of Samande itself. Liang Shao unleashed a powerful spinning kick aimed directly at Hendra's head. The audience gasped, sure that the match would finally end. Hendra bent his knees, tilted his body slightly, and with a gentle sweep of his palm, redirected the force. Liang Shao stumbled, but quickly regained balance. A collective gasp swept through the hall. Even the master's coaches exchanged glances of astonishment. No one had ever seen such control, such calm mastery, from a fighter so young and seemingly ordinary. In the midst of the chaos, Hendra's movements remained composed. Every strike he avoided, every block he performed, was measured and deliberate. He let Liang Shao overextend, using the master's own energy against him. He did not attack recklessly, did not seek to humiliate. Instead, Hendra demonstrated the philosophy of Samande. Flow like water, absorb the energy of your opponent, and respond with precision, ethics, and intelligence. By the end of the round, it was evident that Hendra had changed the momentum of the match. The spectators' expectations of a quick, one-sided victory were shattered. The simple village boy had held his own against a legendary master, using wisdom and skill rather than sheer strength. The tension in the arena grew, anticipation building for what was sure to be an extraordinary climax. The crowd's excitement escalated as the second round began. Liang Shao's frustration was now visible. His every strike carried more force, more urgency, but less precision. Hendra, however, remained the epitome of calm. His eyes never wavered, his stance unshakable. To the spectators, it appeared as if time itself slowed around him. Every kick, every punch of Liang Shao's was carefully read, every movement anticipated. Hendra's mastery was not in speed alone. It was in the strategy, rhythm, and flow of Simande Silat, turning defense into subtle offense. Liang Shao launched a series of rapid strikes, spinning elbows, chest-level palm strikes, and lunging kicks. The arena gasped with each attempt, fully expecting the village boy to falter, but Hendra's technique was seamless. A slight sidestep here, a gentle pivot there, and the strikes passed harmlessly through empty air. The power of each attack was absorbed, redirected, or dissipated without a single wasted motion. To the untrained eye, it seemed almost magical. How could such a small, seemingly ordinary fighter neutralize a living legend's onslaught? Hendra's mind remained focused. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Silat is like water. Let your opponent be the rock, flow, adapt, and find the way. Do not waste energy. Respond only when the moment is right. The principles of patience and observation guided every action. Hendra allowed Liang Xiao to overcommit, to exhaust himself, and then subtly exploited the openings. Each movement was purposeful, a calculated expression of balance and control. The tension in the arena grew palpable. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, some holding their breath. Hendra's calm composure contrasted sharply with Liang Xiao's visible agitation. The master's strikes became faster, more unpredictable. Yet Hendra's movements were precise, almost serene. He shifted slightly, letting energy flow past him, his palms brushing lightly against Liang Xiao's wrist or arm. Not to injure, but to control. Every redirection demonstrated the ethical strength of Simande, a martial art that could neutralize force without causing harm. As Liang Xiao attempted a high, spinning kick toward Hendra's head, the young fighter bent his knees, tilting his body with the slightest adjustment. With a gentle yet perfectly timed sweep, he redirected the kick, causing Liang Xiao to stumble. The crowd erupted in awe. Even the coaches and judges were momentarily speechless. Hendra's calm, intelligent response had turned an aggressive attack into an opportunity. For the first time, whispers of admiration began spreading through the audience. He's reading every move. This is incredible. A small group of Indonesians in the crowd waved their red and white flags, cheering loudly. Hendra felt the energy of their support flow through him. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was defending the honor of his ancestors, the pride of Simande, and the dignity of his homeland. Liang Xiao, now panting and visibly irritated, attempted to overwhelm him with a combination of locks and thrusts, aiming to control Hendra's movements directly. Yet Hendra's flow remained uninterrupted. Each step, each pivot, each subtle deflection maintained perfect balance, turning Liang Xiao's own power into a trap. The audience sensed that the tide was turning. What began as a straightforward match had evolved into a display of martial intelligence and artistry. Hendra's mastery, built on years of patient practice and moral discipline, was shining brighter with every passing second. It became clear this was no ordinary fight. Simande was revealing itself as not just a martial art, but a philosophy, a way of turning force into the tension in the arena reached its peak as Hendra and Liang Xiao circled each other. Liang Xiao's frustration had escalated into impatience. Every strike now carried excessive force, but his precision was compromised. Hendra, in contrast, remained composed and observant. He felt the rhythm of his opponent's movements, noting even the slightest shifts in weight and breath. This was the moment Hendra had been preparing for all his life, the moment where patience and flow could turn the tide. Liang Xiao unleashed a powerful series of strikes, a spinning kick, a rapid palm thrust, and a lunging elbow aimed at Hendra's midsection. The crowd held their breath, expecting the legendary master to finally overpower the village boy. But Hendra moved like water. He shifted slightly to the side, twisting his torso to redirect the incoming force, guiding Liang Xiao's energy harmlessly past him. A subtle movement of his wrist deflected the spinning kick, while his forearm absorbed the momentum of the palm thrust. The audience gasped. Every move seemed effortless, yet each was executed with pinpoint accuracy. Hendra's calm was a stark contrast to Liang Shao's growing agitation. He recalled his father's words, "Let your opponent exhaust himself. Flow with patience. The moment to respond will come, and then act decisively." The young fighter let Liang Shao overcommit, each aggressive move weakening the master's balance. Hendra's eyes glimmered with focus, not fear, as he anticipated the patterns in Liang Shao's assault. To the crowd, it appeared almost impossible. A seemingly ordinary village boy controlling the pace against a living legend. The turning point came when Liang Shao attempted a sweeping side kick aimed at Hendra's head, a signature move meant to end the match. Hendra bent slightly, letting the kick pass over him, and with a subtle, spiraling motion of his body, he redirected Liang Shao's energy. The master stumbled, his footing slightly off. Hendra stepped lightly, applying a gentle press to Liang Shao's wrist and a calculated touch to his shoulder. The force of the strike was not destroyed, but elegantly guided, leaving Liang Shao momentarily unbalanced. The audience erupted in astonishment. Even the judges leaned forward, eyes wide with disbelief. Whispers spread through the crowd. "He's reading every move, predicting every strike. How is this possible?" Hendra's calm presence contrasted with the chaos of Liang Shao's frustration, highlighting the intelligence and subtlety of Simone Salat. The young fighter was not only defending himself, he was demonstrating the art's core philosophy: control without aggression, precision without cruelty. Indonesian spectators waved flags, their cheers echoing through the hall. Hendra felt their support like a current flowing through him, strengthening his resolve. He was no longer merely a competitor. He had become a representative of his culture, a bearer of centuries-old tradition. Liang Shao, sensing the shift, realized that brute force alone would not suffice. He paused, reassessing, eyes narrowing as a flicker of respect and astonishment crossed his features. The turning point was complete. The village boy was no longer merely surviving. He was controlling the battle, setting the pace, and dictating the rhythm of the fight. Hendra's movements remained measured and elegant. Every dodge, every redirection, every subtle adjustment reinforced the philosophy of his art. The audience, now fully captivated, leaned forward in silence, understanding that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The moment when mastery, patience, and strategy overcame raw power and arrogance. The fight had transformed from a simple contest of strength into a display of intelligence, ethics, and ancestral wisdom, a defining moment that would be. The arena buzzed with tension as Hendra and Liang Shao faced each other, the distance between them charged with anticipation. Every spectator could feel the stakes. This was no longer just a contest of skill. It was a test of will, strategy, and the heart of Simone Salat. Liang Shao's breath came in sharp bursts, his frustration now tempered by cautious respect. He had underestimated the village boy, and the cost of arrogance had become apparent. Liang Shao lunged forward with a combination rarely seen in competition: a rapid cross-step, a feint, and a powerful palm strike aimed at Hendra's chest. The motion was precise and explosive, meant to overwhelm in an instant. Yet Hendra, flowing like water, anticipated the sequence. He lowered his center of gravity, pivoting his hips and aligning his feet with the attack. The strike met Hendra's forearm in a controlled deflection. The force redirected diagonally past him. Liang Xiao staggered slightly, caught off guard. The crowd gasped. Hendra's eyes glimmered with focus. He saw not only the immediate motion, but the trajectory, balance, and momentum behind each attack. A subtle twist of his torso, a slight lift of the heel, a guided sweep of the hand. Every micro movement carried purpose. With a short step forward, he turned Liang Xiao's momentum against him, sending the master slightly off balance. The audience erupted into a mixture of cheers and astonished whispers. Hendra's movements were calm, fluid, almost serene, yet devastatingly effective. Liang Xiao adjusted quickly, attempting to regain his rhythm with a flurry of rapid strikes. He aimed for vital points: chest, ribs, and shoulders. Hendra, however, remained a step ahead. He absorbed the energy with subtle shifts, redirected attacks with soft contacts, and countered only when openings appeared. Each touch, each pivot, demonstrated not brute strength, but precision and control, the hallmark of Samanda Silat. The defining moment arrived when Liang Xiao launched his most advanced acrobatic technique, a spinning high kick designed to end the fight decisively. Hendra bent slightly, pivoting in perfect harmony with the motion. At the apex, he executed a small, spiraling motion of his arms and torso, gently intercepting the kick's force. Liang Xiao's balance faltered. Hendra followed through with a precise palm press on the shoulder and a subtle twist of the wrist, redirecting Liang Xiao's energy without harm. The master barely recovered, stepping back with a mix of shock and admiration. The spectators were on their feet, a collective roar echoing through the hall. Some cheered in disbelief, others in awe, as they witnessed a simple village boy turn the tide against a legendary master. Even Liang Xiao's coaches were stunned. This was not a fight dominated by brute force, but by intelligence, anticipation, and the ethical power of Samande. Hendra's chest rose and fell steadily. He had not struck recklessly, nor had he sought to humiliate. Instead, he demonstrated the essence of his martial art: control, precision, and respect. He had turned Liang Xiao's energy against him, maintaining his own center of gravity, exploiting openings only when necessary, and proving that mastery was measured not by dominance, but by dignity. At that moment, it was clear. The match had reached its climax. Hendra was no longer simply defending. He was asserting the philosophy and artistry of Samanda Silat, showing the world that true strength lay in wisdom, restraint, and the quiet flow of ancestral knowledge. The crowd leaned forward, holding their breath, waiting for the final exchange, the moment that would define history. The arena was electric. Every eye was fixed on Hendra and Liang Xiao as they faced each other, sweat dripping and breaths heavy. The final exchanges of the match were underway, and the intensity had reached its peak. Liang Xiao's movements, though still powerful and precise, carried a hint of caution now. The master had begun to understand. This was no ordinary opponent. Hendra, the village boy from Indonesia, was not only surviving, but guiding the rhythm of the fight. Liang Xiao lunged forward with a series of palm strikes and spinning kicks, each more deliberate than the last. Hendra met each with calm anticipation, subtle pivots, and gentle deflections. His body moved like water over rocks, absorbing and redirecting, never resisting violently. Each time Liang Shao overextended, Hendra created an opening, a window to demonstrate control without aggression. The crowd could scarcely believe what they were witnessing. A master in motion, effortlessly neutralizing the legendary Solon techniques while preserving dignity. Then came the moment of truth. Liang Shao attempted a complex combination: 3 cross steps, 2 feints, and a knee strike aimed at Hendra's torso. The speed and force were formidable, but Hendra flowed with the motion, his torso twisting, his back foot pivoting, his hips aligning perfectly. A precise palm strike intercepted Liang Shao's wrist, while his left hand guided the shoulder subtly. The force was deflected, the movement absorbed, leaving Liang Shao momentarily off balance. Gasps erupted from the audience. Whispers of admiration spread. "This is incredible. He's controlling the master." Hendra advanced slightly, but only enough to stabilize Liang Shao and maintain balance. He did not strike with aggression. He struck with precision. The philosophy of Simone de Silat, control without harming, mastery without arrogance, was fully realized in this movement. Liang Shao regained his footing but paused, eyes wide, realization dawning. The boy before him was not just defending, he was teaching. Every move Hendra made conveyed intelligence, respect, and honor. The arena fell silent for a brief moment, as if everyone collectively recognized the magnitude of the lesson. Then, slowly, Liang Shao bowed deeply to Hendra, cupping his hands in a gesture of respect. The crowd erupted, not in mockery or expectation, but in awe. Hendra returned the bow, acknowledging the master and the spirit of martial arts. This was not just a victory of skill, it was a victory of ethics, tradition, and the timeless wisdom of Simande. Spectators waved Indonesian flags, and tears glistened in the eyes of those who understood the depth of what they had witnessed. Hendra looked briefly toward the stands, imagining the rivers of his village, the hands of his father guiding him, the quiet support of his mother. This was for them, for the generations of martial artists who had preserved Simande's heritage. Liang Shao, now composed, addressed the crowd through the microphone. "Today, I have learned that true mastery is not in power alone, but in precision, patience, and respect. Hendra has shown me a way to fight that does not diminish dignity." Hendra nodded quietly, pressing his palms to his chest, the calmness of a village boy, embodying the strength of a proud lineage. The stage was no longer simply a battleground. It had become a bridge between tradition and recognition, humility and skill. The audience, moved and inspired, understood that Hendra had done more than win a match. He had ensured that Simande Silat would be remembered, honored, and respected across the world. The final gong echoed through the arena, signaling the official end of the match. Hendra stood upright, calm and composed, his chest rising and falling steadily. Liang Shao, once a figure of invincible strength and arrogance, now stood across from him, exhausted yet full of respect. The two warriors approached each other slowly, the tension replaced by a shared acknowledgement of skill and honor. This was more than a contest. It was a union of tradition and recognition, a meeting of two paths shaped by discipline and integrity. The referee raised Hendra's hand, officially declaring him the winner. The crowd erupted into deafening applause, some cheering wildly, others standing in silent admiration. Tears shimmered in the eyes of Indonesian spectators, waving their red and white flags high. They embraced each other, shouting Hendra's name, proud that a humble migrant worker had brought honor not only to his country, but to generations of Samanday practitioners. Hendra, however, did not leap in triumph. He lowered his head, pressing his palms to his chest, a quiet smile playing on his lips. Liang Shao stepped forward, cupping his hands in a deep, respectful bow. "You have shown me the meaning of true mastery," he said, his voice amplified through the microphone. "Skill is not only in power, but in patience, ethics, and understanding. Today, I have learned from you." Hendra responded with a nod, acknowledging not just Liang Shao, but the spirit of martial arts that transcended rivalry. The audience cheered, not just for the victory, but for the message it conveyed. That honor, humility, and respect define true greatness. Hendra glanced toward the stands, imagining the faces of his parents, the river in his village, the coconut trees, and the yard where he had trained countless hours. He had carried their guidance, love, and the prayers of his family across oceans to this very moment. The victory was not his alone. It belonged to every teacher, every ancestor, every community that had preserved Samanday for generations. In that instant, he felt the lineage of his art alive within him, connecting past, present, and future. The story of this match would spread far beyond the tournament hall. Martial artists and enthusiasts from around the world whispered the name Samanday with newfound admiration. Hendra had not only proven his skill, but had illuminated the depth of a tradition previously unknown to many. The quiet, flowing movements that once seemed simple were now recognized as a sophisticated art, capable of countering the force of even the most formidable masters. In the aftermath, Hendra offered a final message to the audience, his voice soft but clear. "For those who wander far from home, remember your roots. Walk with pride, but remain humble. True strength is not in dominance, but in preserving dignity, honoring tradition, and respecting your opponent." The spotlight slowly dimmed, leaving the sound of applause echoing in the hall, the fluttering flags responding in unison. Hendra's journey was complete, but the story of Samanday had just begun to reach the world. He left the arena quietly, carrying with him not the exhilaration of victory, but the profound satisfaction of purpose fulfilled. History had been made, not through arrogance, spectacle, or brute strength, but through dedication, skill, and the ethical flow of Samanday Salat. The humble village boy had shown that greatness lies not in appearances, but in mastery, respect, and the courage to honor one's heritage. And in that triumph, the world learned a timeless lesson. True victory is measured not by the fall of the opponent, but by the dignity with which one stands.